In Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, we have 8 steps for lazy GM prep. And one of the things you will notice is it kind of takes concepts that GMs typically package together into encounters, and it splits them all out into different parts. Today, we're going to talk about the advantage of splitting those things up. Why do we do that? What is it that makes it more flexible and makes it easier for us to improvise when we take components that are typically packed together and instead split them all out into different parts? So oftentimes when people are talking about their RPG prep or they're doing their prep, a very common way to do it is to build things out in encounters. I never really was crazy about the term encounters because I often thought about them as combat encounters, and I think sometimes people in their head get combat encounter and encounter different, even though an encounter is really like a talk with an NPC or a scene where you're doing exploration. I actually like the word scene a lot better. Scene works better. That you have a game, the game is broken out into scenes, and scenes can contain lots of different things. A scene can contain a location. They're obviously at a place in the world when they do a scene. A scene could include NPCs that they're talking to. A scene might include things that they can discover. What are some elements of discovery? Puzzles or traps or mosaics on the wall displaying information about something they didn't know about. A scene might include monsters that they're going to fight. A scene might include treasure. It could include all of these different things packaged together in scenes. So a very common way that GMs do their prep is they prep a scene. They say, okay, I have my starting scene, and then I might have a number of scenes that could occur, or maybe they're going to occur in sequence. You will also see published adventures that are built this way, particularly procedural published adventures that are built around a story, often take place with a series of scenes. Now, sometimes those series of scenes are kind of networked out. You know, if they choose one path, they'll go to one scene. If they choose another path, they'll go to another. But sometimes those scenes are linear. They go from one scene, they do some stuff, they go to the next scene, they do some stuff, they go to the next scene, they do some stuff. And the problem with the linear ones is they can feel, I don't want to use the R word, but they can feel a little railroady. It kind of doesn't matter what choices the characters are making. They're still going from one scene to another. Now, sometimes that's just the way the story works out. Sometimes that works out well for an adventure. I loved the adventure Light of Xeraxis. This is the adventure that's part of the Spelljammer box set for Wizards of the Coast. I ran the adventure and I liked it a lot. And it is a very procedural scene-based adventure. You know you're going from point A to point B to point C to point D. The whole book is kind of laid out that way. Scene, 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 scene. And not a lot of like open world exploration stuff that you can find in other adventures. Adventures like Tomb of Annihilation or Curse of Strahd have you kind of going from place to place. And it's still a little scene-based. Like once you go to a particular place, then you have a location, you have NPCs, you have things that you discover, you have treasure that you pick up, you have monsters that you pick up. They're all kind of built together. But when we're doing our prep, one of the things that's really important for us, one of the elements that really matters that I've kind of talked about with many hundreds of DMs, I've surveyed thousands of DMs and gotten lots of feedback on this, and a couple of truths had come out of those conversations. One of the truths were that many times the less prep GMs did, the better the game went. And other ones are that the kind of tools that help GMs the most are the ones that help them improvise. And these are really two interrelated ideas. That when you're running a game, giving yourself the ability and the freedom to improvise and still have the things that you need to build a rich game are more valuable than when you've kind of locked yourself into, well, a scene is going to be a particular scene that's going to lead to a next scene. And these are all the things that are in the scene. And I can't change them and I can't really move them because they're all built together. So when I was designing the 8 steps for Return, one of the things I did is I essentially took all of the components that you typically had for a series of scenes, and I took a hammer and I shattered them and they exploded outwards. And instead of having all of those scenes where you have a particular scene that has NPCs that are in the scene, you have things that you could discover in the scene, you have a location where the scene is taking place, you have a treasure that the characters might acquire should they accomplish something in the scene, and they have monsters they might fight in the scene. Instead, we broke all those out into separate components. So that's why in the 8 steps, we have like the strong start, we have secrets and clues, we have locations, we have monsters, we have NPCs, and we have treasure, and they're all split apart from the rest of it. Now, we do have a section in one of the steps, step 2 of the 8 steps is scenes. But the scenes that we have there are not these big, fully fledged balls that have all of the components to them. The scenes that we have there are really just an outline of the things that might happen. Sometimes they're just 1 or 2 sentences. There were 1 or 2 words. They're probably no longer than a sentence. And they're usually just a few words. And it's usually just a bullet list of here are the things that might happen. Or here are some of the decisions that need to be made by the characters. Or here are some of the options for the next game that are going to come up. And what I've talked about before is that scenes is really a catch-all for lots of different things, including hooks, including future choices that are being made, including forks that the characters might follow through. So scenes can really encapsulate a lot of different things. And sometimes you might have hardly anything. For example, here is an example of the notes that I have for a game that I'm literally running in about an hour. And I have scenes, and I have 2 things in there. Encounter at Old Grigor's hut, which is already the secret and clue. Or, I'm sorry, which is already the strong start, so I probably don't even need it there. And then the real scene is traveling to the Vile Well. That I'm going to have a series of stuff that's going to occur in traveling to the Vile Well. I don't need a lot because I have everything else. So what are those different components that we have, right? And those are the other parts of the 8 steps. It's not all 8 steps because sometimes we have some other things, but secrets and clues are abstracted from the scenes. We don't know which scenes that those secrets and clues are going to get revealed. We don't know the fantastic locations. We have a list of locations, maybe we have a map, but we keep the physical location abstracted from the NPCs, from monsters, from treasure, and from secrets, because that way, when the characters go to a location, at the moment in the game, we can decide what monsters make sense given the situation or given the pacing of the game. Is there an NPC here? Again, based on situation or based on the pacing of the game, do we want to have an NPC that they meet with instead of having another fight? Do we want to drop treasure in here? Does it make sense that treasure would be found in this place? Does it make sense that given the current situation that treasure would be found here? So we separate all of those things out so that way you can build the scenes at the table. Again, that focus of preparing to improvise. What are the things that we want to have on hand that help us build the story as it goes? What this enables for us is that we can decide based on what the characters are doing, based on the decisions that the players are making, we can decide which components we want to drop into a particular scene right when we have it. And we still have those components. They're already pre-cooked. They're already ready to go. We know what monsters might be available. We know what treasure we might pick up. We know what NPCs we might drop in. We know what secrets and clues they might pick up. And we can decide at the moment, this is the one we want to drop here, drop this in, drop this in. We've done some pre-work to help us build those scenes. Some GMs are so good that they don't even need to do that they can just literally improv everything as they sit down and go. They can take stuff from the players, they can build locations on the fly. But I think a lot of GMs, myself included, I need something. I need some good prompts. I need some little bit of homework that I've done to give me an idea about what these locations are like or what some of these secrets are going to be that they could learn, or a little bit about the NPCs, the name of the NPCs, some of their mannerisms, some goals about what they want, maybe an archetype from popular fiction that I can use to roleplay that character. So we want to separate all these out, but there's a really distinct reason why all of these components are split out from one another and that we're preparing them separated from one another. And that's because we're focused on this idea of preparing to improvise, that our goal is to build scenes as they make sense, as they occur during the game, from all of these little components that we've prepared ahead of time. So it's really the benefit of both worlds. We have a benefit of the flexibility of being able to think on our feet and building scenes during the situation, but we've already done our homework to build out some of the important secrets and clues, clarifying what they are, why they're important, why they're there, who the monsters are, what monsters make sense given the situation. We can even build little tables of those monsters if we want to build a real random, maybe we roll randomly to determine or maybe we pick a monster based on the situation that's going on. Same thing with NPCs. We've done a little bit of pre-chewing on those NPCs so we know who they are. We just don't know necessarily that they're going to show up in one scene or the other. So that's really why we break up all of these different components that you would typically find in scenes in RPGs. That if you're used to preparing your game by building out individual scenes that have NPCs, the location, monsters, treasure, and information the characters might discover, and you're used to having in this block, consider shattering the block. Consider breaking those pieces out across your whole session, and instead having secrets, monsters, NPCs, locations, and treasure that are split apart from one another so that you can pick from the different pieces as you need them when you're building out the scenes for the game you're running. If you like this show and you want more stuff like this from me, please consider subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter. It is absolutely free to sign up. You can find a link in your show notes, both on the podcast and on the YouTube video. All you have to do is give your email address and you get a weekly RPG-related email sent directly to your inbox, along with links to all of the other material I put out there. You can also join the Sly Flourish Patreon. If you join at the Hero tier, you get the Readings and Reflections podcast. You also get access to all kinds of tools, tips, tricks, adventures, all kinds of stuff you get for being a patron of Sly Flourish. It's a really, really good deal. And you can pick up my books, including Forge of Foes, Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, The Lazy DM's Companion, The Lazy DM's Workbook, and all the fantastic adventure books available in the Sly Flourish bookstore. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.